At what point would you say, okay, Kerry, this far and no further? Okay, Kerry, we're against the war, but now you want to pursue it aggressively. John Kerry, how do you tell the next 100,000 Iraqis that they have to die for a mistake? How do you? And how do you tell the next 10,000 GIs that they have to die in Iraq for a mistake? And where's it all going to end? Where's it all going to end? What's the breaking point when a man who fought in Vietnam and then opposed the war and knows what a quagmire is like when he was a young man? And now he's out hawking Bush on the first presidential debate. He's going to go after him. He's going to victory. He's going to smash his way to victory. More troops, okay, needed. We'll send them over there. William Safire gloated in a column in the New York Times saying, John Kerry, welcome to the ranks of the neocons. You've out-warhawked George W. Bush. Well, okay, then that doesn't get your breaking point. Okay, then you say to John Kerry, well, what's your position on Israel-Palestine? Are you petrified wood on that, like George W. Bush? Do you think for yourself? Do you think for yourself? You want to settle that problem? You connect with the broad and deep Israeli peace movement. They can put 120,000 people in a square in Tel Aviv protesting the prime minister's policies and brutalization of the Palestinian people. And these people, these peace movement people, are not marginal. They're not marginal. They represent ex-generals, former fighter pilots. They represent the last 4 heads of the intelligence service of the Israeli government. They represent mayors, former mayors, professors, rabbis for justice, members of the Knesset. They represent half of the opinion of the Israeli people. They represent years of work with their Palestinian counterparts to develop a detailed accord of a 2-state solution, a small, viable Palestinian state in control of its air, water, and boundaries, and a secure Israel. None of these people ever get invited to testify before Congress. They don't get invited to the White House. When 1,000 Israeli reserve officers and combat fighters signed that great petition over a year ago and said that while they defend Israel proper to the limit of their endurance, they will no longer fight beyond the 1967 borders. They will no longer participate in activities, watch their words, that dominate, expel, humiliate, and starve an entire people, end quote. They're not invited to Washington. Why is it that in Israel you can criticize the Israeli government all over the place, but not in the silent realm of the U.S. government? Huh? Thomas Friedman of the New York Times on February 9th, the columnist who's been critical of both sides, Israeli-Palestinian, wrote, quote, Ariel Sharon has Yasser Arafat under control in Ramallah. No, he has Yasser Arafat under house arrest in Ramallah and George W. Bush under house arrest in the Oval Office, all designed to make sure that the U.S. government does nothing. And John Kerry is on the same page with George W. Bush. It's called protective imitation. You take the issue off the table. It's never discussed in the 3 presidential debates. Well, maybe that doesn't reach the breaking point. Well, how about John Kerry refuses to challenge the wasteful, bloated, redundant, and corrupt military contracting budget in the Pentagon, which now takes 50% of the entire federal government's operating expenditures, and we have no major enemy left in the world, no more Soviet Union. All he has to do is go to the General Accounting Office reports, which will reach the ceiling, documenting the waste, the corruption, the fraud, the cost overruns, the weapons that aren't needed because they're so redundant. We have enough weapons in our arsenal to blow up the earth 300 times and make the rubble bounce. We have no second power, no third power, no fourth power that can challenge us. And still, you're told back home, there's not enough money for subways. There's not enough money for health clinics. There's not enough money to make our schools fit for students to learn. Not enough money to upgrade the drinking water systems. Brand new public transit systems. No, there's not enough money. But there's money for F-22s, a little plane that now is going for $220 million, which is 5 times what this government spends on malaria research that is taking 3 million lives a year. Malaria, which was the second cause of hospitalization in Vietnam for our soldiers. One plane you could put on this platform. More aircraft carriers, more deadly submarines. We have many Trident submarines. One of them, in 1 hour, can destroy 200 cities in the world. This is madness. In my book, The Good Fight, I have a chapter called Institutional Insanity. We have to apply mental health standards to our governmental and corporate institutions. What? Still no breaking point. Well, John Kerry wants more NAFTAs and WTOs. He voted for them. And corporate globalization is submarining our economy, and it's just beginning. Outsourcing now of white-collar jobs is becoming more and more publicized. People who work every day and the product of their work results in software can be outsourced to other countries that have no unions, no worker rights, bright people who can do the job as good as our people for 1/10 or 1/20th of the wages. You'd think there'd be some forward planning by the Democratic Party on this issue. You think the labor unions would not just say, well, we got ours, 10% of the workforce, that's all they have, 10% of the workforce, but we're not going to pull Kerry to stand up for the working families that represent 90% of the workers in this country. Still no breaking point, eh? Well, how about John Kerry on the criminal injustice system? Have you heard much about that? Have you heard him come out against corporate prisons, 3 strikes and you're out? He's for the death penalty, a little bit modified compared to his counterpart in the White House. But what's fascinating about it is no matter how many liberals and conservatives say to the Congress, the drug war has failed. The drug war has failed. We should not, in 2004, send drug addicts or drug users who are non-violent to jail. We don't send nicotine addicts to jail. We don't send alcoholics to jail. What are we doing sending these people to jail at $45,000 a year? Still no breaking point. No breaking point. What is his minimum wage? Of course, Bush is always worse. Look, when they say, is Kerry better than Bush? My answer is, anybody would be better than Bush. Yeah, go through a phone book. You're likely to have a more humane person than George W. Bush. Notice, John Kerry, under our pressure, I'm not saying it was caused by us, but we kept hammering the Democrats on minimum wage. He came out a few months ago. By 2007, he wants to raise the minimum wage to $7 an hour. If it was indexed to inflation, the way Congress indexes its salary, it would now be $8.50 an hour. The economy has tripled since 1973. Where are the gains to the workers compared to the rich, the super rich, and the hyper rich? Wouldn't Senator Kerry get more votes if he stood up with people who are making $7 an hour working their heads off in large corporations headed by CEOs who are making a documented $7,000 an hour every hour? Wouldn't that be a dramatic contrast with